Volocane Wadi Lilahul Lan Akfarad, which apparently is Monday question and answer, which this episode is, and that was suggested by Dank memes. So, Fusro Da, everybody! Anyway, on to the questions for this week. Super Hooper says, have you checked out Robocraft? It's a 15 versus 15 all-out robot war. Like the one, Robot Wars, hosted by Craig Charles back in the day. I'm pretty sure most people have watched it, and if you hadn't, you probably should check it out. Basically, people in the UK, and maybe America, I'm not sure whether it was an American show as well, but people made their own little robots to fight with in battles in a 1 versus 1 style arena. And then there were several house robots which were basically like NPCs in a game, but they were controlled by the house or the staff at the gaming centre, and there was a big league, and it was very entertaining to watch. And honestly, any game that's like that I'd be interested in, but the thing that puts me off there is you say it's a 15 versus 15 robo war, but I'm guessing in the same light you probably craft your own robot, but I haven't personally checked it out. I'll have a look at it anyway. Steveo Dog says, what happened to MLG PS2? So if you saw the video I released just earlier, yesterday or today, it's basically not really happening anymore. All that's left is the war report, which is like an in-game spoof sort of news report. But the actual MLG content or any sort of tournament or anything doesn't exist. Andi Dai says, hey Josh, do you have any advice for people who are going into college? Me, smiley face. So, I don't have any experience of, I'm guessing, American college. I don't really know the culture compared to English university, which I have gone through. But I think probably a few of the things are the same. My first advice would be to talk to absolutely everyone you can. So even if you're going on a bus, I mean early on when you first start as a freshman or a fresher, as they're called in the UK, you want to talk to absolutely everybody, push out of your comfort zone, because I'm a pretty shy guy. Well, I used to be a pretty shy guy in terms of talking to strangers, but I really pushed myself to talk to absolutely everybody that I could, both even on like a bus transport going into the university, talking to people in your classes, joining any sort of societies if you can. But yeah, basically just talking to absolutely everybody, because you don't know who your friends are going to be when you're in university, and you may talk to somebody in the first week and then meet them again when you're going out or doing whatever, and they become friends. However, my warning is, and it's probably quite similar to the UK system. I think America has varsities or houses, but I don't really know how they work. But the societies in the UK, especially the sports societies, do have some pretty weird social rituals. I would suggest not being bullied into any of the more disgusting rituals that take place. For example, I know one of my friends joined the lacrosse team, and he was made to drink urine, which he boasts about proudly, but to be honest, I felt a bit sorry for him, and I don't know whether that was more bullying in the society, but at the end of the day, don't let people that are in the society push you around. Just do what you're comfortable with, and obviously you've got to go out there and be friends and join societies if you want to, but there are people out there that will abuse their power and what little of it they have, but just be careful with societies, because I know things like that can happen. And I guess in actual American media, which I don't know how true to life it is, because I've never been to an American college, but it does show a lot of that sort of douchebaggery, as you might be able to call it. So I think you'll have a great time at college anyway. I had a great time at uni. Normantas the Dwarf says, are you speaking Russian or something? Because I am from Lithuania and that sounds nothing like it is actually pronounced. And yeah, basically every week I do a pronunciation of another language. Somebody requests a language to do, and this week was, I'm not sure what the dragon language is called in Skyrim. I know that the guy's Dovahkiin, but anyway, I generally butcher the languages and the pronunciation, and actually I realised that having a bit of a stereotypical Russian accent on that one probably wasn't the best idea when there's a bit of tension with Russia and Europe at the moment, so sorry about that. Dominic Donahue says, what do you think about giving new players more to work with, instead of just starting with the bare minimum? I think Cold-Tier, the new player continent, will help with this, but I think that it is necessary to give new players 200 to 300 certification points. Okay, so How I feel about this isn't so much that you need to give them certification points to get started, because I think at the start when you first jump into the game you don't really know what to cert into and you might actually waste those certification points. What I suggest is that every certification line that you can go into has one point in it already, so then you don't have to cert that first point, especially for things like aircraft where you can have fire suppression 1 and hover frame and things like that. Just to give everybody the option of specialising, and especially with aircraft, it's very important to have fire suppression or flares or any sort of countermeasure, because when you're flying on your own without fire suppression or flares, you're at a big disadvantage really. Similarly, I think that the jump jets 1, 2 and going up to the last jump jets don't give enough of a jump, because at the start the jump jets are just absolutely worthless. So I think that they perhaps the jumps from each level shouldn't be so large in when you're leveling up, and then people will still want to level into them because you still want to be the best, but not to such a degree that it is now. So I do agree that new players need a lot more help to get off the ground, and I think it's just a bit unnecessary that there isn't the certification points out there. And I think, well, Daybreak now, I was going to say SOE, is logic is that they want people to spend their certs on experience lines rather than weapons, because they want to make profit on them. They want people to buy station cash. But I think it's quite damaging for players that are starting off, because it's such a hard game to get into in the first place, to actually have these time constraints that you'd actually have to go and grind out the first levels of things. Germauxxx, or Belgian Gamer, says, what do you think about Battlefield Hardline and Battlefield 4? Well, actually, I've actually purchased Battlefield Hardline, which I'm starting to regret now after watching a few reviews of it. But basically, it'll take me about 3 days to download it, and that's 3 days without internet access because of my download speed. So I've been putting it off a little bit, and I do have it. I bought it on a G2A sale, which is thankful, rather than buying it on full price. But what I've heard from the Angry Joe show, or the Angry Gamer, I'm not sure how he's referred to, is that the single player especially is very mediocre, and the characters are pretty flat. But to be honest, I was never really interested in the single player, and the multiplayer, he's sort of outlined that the game is almost like a mod that has taken all the good bits of Battlefield and tried and lost a lot of it, like tanks and helicopters and things that make the larger maps actually suitable for being large, and now instead you have smaller maps with the theme of the police shoehorned into that world. I think he says that instead of having it on the Battlefield engine, it should have been on its own engine, and it would have been a lot better. But I haven't tried it yet, so I'm not too sure. And with Battlefield 4, I enjoyed Battlefield 4, but to be honest, I still don't think it had the qualities of Battlefield prior to it, like Battlefield 1942 and up to Battlefield 2142, which truly were the real Battlefield experience. And Battlefield 2142 was the last one to really bring that real new dynamic with the Titans, and that actually worked in the context of a Battlefield game, because obviously a Titan still allowed for helicopters, or, well, they were more sort of like hover ships. On to the next question. kritzcake says, if you could remove and add one element or mechanic in Planetside 2, what would it be? So I think the mechanic I'd get rid of is the implant system, because personally I don't think the implant system has any place in the game, and I think, well, at least in the form it is now, that it's so complicated and such a look of the draw on how to buy the actual implants that they aren't really pay to win, because you'd have to pay a lot of money to actually get what you want, and it's the only thing in the game that can be viewed as pay to win, because the implants are so much better than the other ones and you can pay for them. And finally, they're just confusing and they're hard to access, and for somebody that doesn't pay any money towards the game, you never have the charge to use them. And to be honest, I don't think that they are that much overpowered. I just never noticed using implants because I think they're such a redundant feature. And the feature I probably add is a different capturing mechanic for smaller bases, so that the maps aren't so restricted and so linear in their. I think if the smaller facilities had a different capturing mechanic, say, or an instant one, or on proportion, or something like that, something new and different, it'd make the game flow a lot better, and we might actually see continents being capped in a legitimate way rather than just having to have 60% population and slowly push across a whole day to take the map in ghost capping. Nick Pereira says, will you play World of Warships when it goes live? And I've not even heard of World of Warships, to be honest with you. I've heard of World of Tanks and I haven't got around to playing that yet. But perhaps if World of Warships comes out and it's a new game and it's interesting, I'll definitely give it a shot. RazoRaptor says, what do you think of giving light assaults binoculars so that they can scout ahead for their team? They could spot and tell the distance of the enemy using them, and for me this is a better way of than spamming Q to warn of a Zerg. So firstly, I don't know whether they'd be the best suited thing on a light assault, although I guess light assaults can get on top of rocks and things and start scouting people out, but perhaps it's something that should be on an engineer. I don't know whether it'd be too overpowered in a light assault. And especially if you're gauging the distances away of enemies, it might be worthwhile having it for an engineer so that you can spot them and work out the range and then go back into your tank and then be able to work out how much you have to compensate for that range. But I don't know, that doesn't really work in the game because there aren't really range notches on the tanks. But I don't know whether it'd be a good system for replacing the Q targeting. I personally don't mind spamming Q target for the game, but I wouldn't be opposed to putting binoculars in the game, but I don't think that, and I know that we have to be realistic with what the Daybreak team can do because they've got a smaller team, so I don't know whether they'd actually get around to that because it wouldn't be a priority for them, but it's a nice idea. Emma Heath says, do you partake in any illegal activities? How do you feel about Jack the Ripper? What did you get up to on Saturday night? And are you gay? Am I gay? So, interesting question from Emma, who actually is a in real life friend. So firstly, on the illegal note, I don't recall doing anything really that illegal. Nothing that I'd admit to anyway. What do I feel about Jack the Ripper? I don't really know. I don't think about Jack the Ripper on a daily basis, but I guess a psychotic murderer. And there's a board game called Whitechapel where you're Jack the Ripper and you work as the detectives to try and find where Jack the Ripper is on the map, and he goes around each night murdering a prostitute and you have to find him on his route back home, and that's very fun. So that's the most interaction I've had with Jack the Ripper in a while since the Johnny Depp movie. What did I get up last Saturday night, which was the Saturday night before? I was actually out drinking with Emma Heath, and I think I was a very good, well-behaved drunk. And that's actually a lie. I really can't handle alcohol at all. So I was a bit of a mess. And am I gay? I don't think I'm gay. I'm fairly sure I'm not. But as a liberal person, I'm very open to the fact that there might be a man out there for me. But I have never been attracted to a man before. And I've only been attracted to women. And the drunk me does often make a beeline for women and makes a fool of myself. So I'm guessing I'm not gay. And am I gay? I'm not sure, Emma. You could be very gay. But it doesn't matter, nobody's going to judge you. AJ Pop says, overall, how do you feel DBG, which is Daybreak Gaming, is doing with their management of Planetside 2 as they've taken over from SOE? Do you think that they are moving in the right direction? What do you think they should work on next? I mean, if they are working in the right direction, I mean, generally they've lost a lot of the staff and a lot of developing power, and they've lost people like the vehicle developers and things that would have been interesting to add to the game, and the map designers. So are they moving in the right direction? I'm not sure. A lot of what they're doing is changing little things, changing cosmetics and things, and focusing on the performance issues, which is important. But I think that there's just not enough evidence to show how they're doing yet, and how they will do in the future, whereas in H1Z1, quite similar to some of SOE's blunders, they made a marketing blunder about saying that they'd charge for Battle Royale in an alpha, which people have already paid £15 for, or $20, which was a big kick in the jimmies, because in the first place having cosmetics in that game was a bit ridiculous, because why would you pay money in a game you've already paid for when it's going to be free to play later? It was just a big clusterfuck really, and the whole community had an outrage, and I think that Daybreak Gaming as a whole hasn't really proven itself to be completely capable yet, but Planetside 2 is coasting along and they're doing little bits here and there. Is it what the veterans want? No. Is it what's right for what they can actually do with their resources? Probably. What do I think they should work on next? I'm quite vocal about the fact that I really think they should try and work out how to stop partly the redeployer mechanic and making it so that there's more strategy in the game and the fights matter so we don't lose so many players, and obviously the performance issues, and similarly looking at the way that bases are captured and the spawn rooms, because I think at the moment the fights are very disinteresting and stale when you get stuck in a base and you're being spawn camped, and tanks don't really have a purpose in that fight. JeremyClaws says, what 5 infantry weapons between all 3 factions do you think need tweaking? Not that it exactly needs tweaking, but the NC Gorsaw could do with not being the starter weapon for new players anymore in the NC, because it's just such a hard weapon to control and it really doesn't lend itself to a new player using it. And there are other NC LMGs out there that would do a better job at introducing people to LMGs and the heavy role in the NC side. I think that there are a few boring Vanu heavy assault rifles, like the Pulsar LSW, and the battle rifles on all factions could have a little another look at, just to make them more viable in combat. I think the Beamer needs looking at because it's a bit too weak at the moment, and that is the default pistol for Vanu, so it's important that that one isn't so pathetic really at the moment, because obviously that's part of not being paid to win in the game. And fifthly, I think it's the Ravens that you can control whilst you're firing them off the max. I think those are the blue ones that make the beep, beep, beep sound, but I'm not too sure. So Ravens on maxes are pretty ridiculously overpowered, because like the turrets there, they are guided, but there's so many missiles. It's not like one slow missile, it's several at once, and it's almost impossible to dodge them with tanks. I think they are ridiculously overpowered, so I tweak those. So anyway, thank you all very much for watching. I'll just do a little update about the channel. So people have been saying, Josh, don't burn yourself out by doing too many videos in a week. And whilst I think that's good advice, I also have basically my Mondays and Tuesdays I could have completely off, and a Friday I don't have work, but basically I look for jobs in those days. But it's just something to keep me occupied, is making videos. And maybe 6 is too many in a week, but the vlog style one and the Effort Will Do It live one are much easier to make, so I can probably make those when I'm working. But perhaps I'll cut it down. And obviously yesterday I didn't get my video out till later, so I didn't actually do my Q&A until today, which is a Tuesday, which is my slot for any sort of content. So maybe Tuesday might be a rest day, or it might be some random content, depending on how busy I am in the week. So yeah, again, thanks for watching. If you have any questions for next week, be sure to put them in the comments below, because that's what makes my videos. And thank you very much for everybody that's asked a question, even if they're very silly. I don't mind silly questions, and if they're completely irrelevant to anything. And so if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Until next time everybody, Joshino.